On a stormy, rainy night in an almost abandoned location resembling old training academies, a group of warriors stands in the courtyard of a deserted mansion. Their leader calls out to see if any residents might be in the area, hoping someone will appear. Amidst the heavy downpour, a child emerges from the academy's gate, standing silently and observing without uttering a word, awaiting the stranger's request. The warriors are taken aback, while their leader pauses to reflect. How could someone possibly live in such a desolate place? Their astonishment deepens when they realize the sole resident is just a child. The leader requests permission from the child to spend the night there, seeking shelter from the relentless rain. The boy, the story's protagonist, hesitates momentarily, uncertain of the stranger's intentions or identities. Despite his young age, they treat him with respect and politeness, leading him to suspect they might think he's a young sorcerer guarding the abandoned academy. The child greets them and senses they don't seem to be bad people. He explains that he has been living in the abandoned academy for years and grants them permission to stay, provided they steer clear of the small wing he uses. The leader thanks the boy for his hospitality, assuring him that his men will respect the condition. Turning to his warriors, the leader instructs them to find sleeping spots within the academy, emphasizing the rule to avoid the young master's wing. The warriors respond in unison, affirming their understanding. The men spread out to organize their sleeping arrangements, while the boy observes them and notices the Tang clan emblem on their clothing. He deduces that they all belong to the same clan, sparking his curiosity about their personalities and motives. However, he sets the thought aside to focus on other responsibilities. Before retreating to his wing, the leader greets the boy once more, and the child excuses himself, heading toward his small quarters. There, he attends to his tiny companions. With a broad smile, he approaches a large ceramic jar, opening it eagerly to reveal a collection of small cockroaches. Holding the jar, he remarks how their hunger must have grown due to his delay. Next, he opens another jar, revealing a large black spider known as the Black Earth Tiger, native to Hainan, China. This spider, characterized by its unique black tiger-like stripes, can grow up to 20 centimeters in length. The boy offers the spider a cockroach to feast on and expresses gratitude for having these creatures as companions in such a lonely place. Watching the spider devour its meal fills him with joy, especially seeing its remarkable growth. After ensuring the spider is satisfied, the boy moves to a drawer, pulling it open to reveal a cave gecko. He feeds it another cockroach, marveling at the unique patterns adorning its body and tail. As the boy enjoys tending to his companions, he is suddenly startled when the gecko bites him, causing him to jerk back in fright. At that moment, memories of his previous life flood his mind. Before reincarnating, he had been a streamer managing a channel with over 1 million subscribers, primarily focused on insects and venomous animals. He recalls the live stream he hosted to celebrate reaching 1 million subscribers, titled The Top 10 Most Venomous Snakes in the World, during which he traveled to Africa to find the black mamba, one of the most dangerous venomous snakes, fulfilling his fans' relentless requests to see it. The memory shifts to his frantic search for the snake during that live stream. He vividly recalls telling his audience he needed a break, but would resume the search shortly. In a last-ditch effort, he even checked the refrigerator, though he knew it was impossible for the snake to be there. The shocking twist occurred when the elusive snake appeared on top of the fridge. As he approached, it struck swiftly, delivering a venomous bite before he could react. He collapsed to the ground, motionless, marking the end of his life. In his final moments, he realized the irony. After all his exhausting efforts, the snake had been within his reach the entire time. Will hears knocking at his door, and it turns out to be the clan leader calling out to him, asking if he is inside. Opening the door, Will asks the leader what he needs. The leader responds that they wanted to thank him for hosting them in such terrible weather and invites him to join them for dinner, mentioning that they had hunted a deer. Will is greatly surprised, and understandably so. He had only ever eaten snake and lizard meat before. Will expresses his gratitude, saying he would be delighted to join them. The leader chuckles at his innocence and invites him along. As the rain subsides, the group lights a large fire and begins roasting the deer in a way that fills the air with a delicious aroma. Will watches the scene with his mouth watering, longing for the taste of meat. Noticing his eager expression, the leader smiles and reassures him that the food will take some time to cook, suggesting they use the wait to chat. Embarrassed that his expression gave him away, Will encourages the leader to ask whatever questions he has. The leader asks if Will lives alone in the Hainan mountain range and inquires about his age. Will replies that he might be 14 or 15, prompting the leader's surprise that he isn't sure of his own age. Will, knowing he can't reveal his reincarnation, improvises a story about falling on his head as a child, leaving him with memory gaps. The leader sympathizes, expressing his regret for Will's hardship, and asks again if he truly lives there alone. Will laughs lightly and explains that he has no talent or skills and spends his time hunting snakes and selling their skins to meet his needs. The leader marvels at his courage to engage in such dangerous work at his age, but Will responds that he's grown used to it. An elderly man, the leader's father, enters and informs them that part of the meal is ready, pointing out how hungry the boy seems. Feeling embarrassed, Will thanks him and takes a piece of meat, mentioning how long it has been since he last ate meat. Taking his first bite, Will is overwhelmed with happiness, feeling as though the experience is surreal. He eats heartily, amusing the leader and his father with his appetite. They laugh, but their joy is evident as they see him eating well. The leader tells Will that he'd like to speak with him while he eats. Will, mid-bite, eagerly listens, curious about what the leader wants to say. The leader begins by explaining that they are searching for something specific and asks Will seriously if he has seen anything unusual nearby. Will doesn't fully understand what the leader means, prompting the latter to clarify, though he hesitates to find the right words. The elderly man interjects, suggesting that they owe Will the truth since he's sheltered them and poses no threat due to his lack of knowledge and solitary lifestyle. The leader agrees with his father, his expression growing serious before continuing. He tells Will that they are searching for a large worm covered in blue spots. Will is astonished at the idea of traveling such a distance for a worm. The leader elaborates, explaining that the creature is known as the blue-spotted worm, and its size is so massive that Will may have noticed it before. Curious, Will asks just how big the worm is. The leader explains that if the worm is fully grown, it could swallow a person Will's size whole. Stunned by this revelation, Will is left grappling with the realization that this world might be far more extraordinary than he initially thought, believing at first that he had merely gone back in time a few centuries. The elderly man reassures him not to worry, explaining that they've traveled this far with the sole purpose of hunting the creature. Will asks if they plan to capture it for breeding, causing both the elder and the leader to look at him in shock. The elder tries to take the suggestion seriously, but soon bursts into laughter, joined by his son. They find the idea of raising a giant worm both naive and amusing, though undeniably endearing. The elderly man explains that raising the worm is impossible, as their goal is to use it for a cure. Will, surprised by the response, asks for clarification. Initially, he had assumed they were mere traders, but now they seemed more like smugglers or drug dealers. He inquires how a worm could possibly be used as a remedy. The elder clarifies that it's an uncertain possibility, but his granddaughter suffers from a severe illness, and they believe that the worm's internal gem might be the only cure to save her life. Understanding their motives, Will realizes they are driven by a desire to save her. The leader adds that the patient isn't just the elder's granddaughter, but also his own daughter. Reflecting on this, Will acknowledges their desperation to try anything, no matter how uncertain, to save her, because parents would go to any lengths for their children. Despite feeling sympathy for the worm, Will decides to help them out of respect for their hospitality and kindness toward him. Will begins to speak, and the leader asks if he has seen the worm in the area. Will responds that he hasn't, disappointing the leader. However, Will continues with a confident smile, stating that he probably knows where it can be found. He explains his extensive knowledge of venomous creatures, surpassing anyone else's expertise, as it stemmed from his obsession with them, and of course his own death by a venomous snake bite. Will elaborates, pointing out that among millions of species, roughly 20,000 are venomous, and he is familiar with all of them. He asserts that worms are no exception and could be classified among such creatures. Immersing himself in thought, he delves into his mental library. After an extensive mental search, he finally retrieves the information he needs. He informs the leader that he might now know the exact location of the worm, astonishing everyone present. The leader and the elder eagerly ask him for specific detail. Will takes a moment and asks them about the areas they've already searched. The leader explains that they have looked in the south and east and focused on the riverbanks in the north, but only during the daytime. Will understands why they haven't found the worm. He tells them they missed it because of the characteristics of the location they chose to search. The elder asks him to elaborate, and Will begins to explain, noting that worms belong to the arthropod phylum and centipede class, which are spread over vast areas. He explains that since these creatures are cold-blooded, they require habitats that maintain their temperature and moisture. He adds that what sets these creatures apart from other insects is their waterproof exoskeleton with pores, which makes them favor highly humid environments, though they avoid completely waterlogged areas. Moreover, they cannot survive without access to water. Due to these traits, the blue-spotted worm rarely inhabits forests or riverbanks. The elder is astonished by Will's insights, admitting he had assumed such worms would prefer damp places like decayed wood crevices. Will clarifies that small worms might live there, but giant worms like the one they are searching for cannot survive in forests or river rocks, as they require locations that provide complete concealment. Both the elder and the leader realized their approach had been entirely misguided, and no matter how hard they searched in those areas, they would never have found it. The leader asks Will about the ideal location to find the blue-spotted worm, emphasizing that if he helps them locate it, he will be richly rewarded. Will smiles confidently and gestures toward the campfire, suggesting the worm might be in the Rocky Mountains on the western bank. He explains that centipede-like worms typically hide among rocks during the day and come out to wander at night. At midnight, the leader and his men head to the Rocky Mountain and begin searching for the worm, combing every possible hiding spot. Despite their efforts, they find no trace of it. The leader climbs to a high vantage point, hoping to spot it from above, but comes up empty-handed. One of the men doubts the accuracy of Will's information, suggesting he might have been mistaken. The leader descends and decides to call off the search for the night, firing a signal arrow to gather his men. The team assembles around the fire, exhausted and disappointed, lamenting the lack of results despite their faith in the young master's guidance. They express their frustration at not finding the worm, despite Will's confidence. The leader remains silent, lost in thought, before voicing his sorrow over the dwindling hope of saving Huyan, who had been the most extraordinary talent in the family. The elder suddenly interrupts, joining the group by the fire and asking the leader about the search results. The leader admits defeat, stating that they found nothing, and asks his father if he discovered anything different. The elder, equally dejected, replies that he also failed. He adds gravely that Huyan might only have 3 months left to live and doubts they will find the worm in such a short time. A heavy silence falls over the group, laden with sadness, until the leader suggests searching the southern region the next day, as they found no sign of the worm in the west. The elder agrees, but suddenly pauses, startled by a realization. He exclaims in disbelief, wondering how he had missed something so critical. The leader asks if the elder noticed anything unusual, and the elder responds that there were no traces of the worm or any animals in the area over the past 3 days. The leader and his men are taken aback by this revelation, and the elder explains that the absence of animal activity on the mountain is a strong clue in itself. He speculates that the animals either fled or became prey to the giant worm. Placing a reassuring hand on his son's shoulder, the elder declares with certainty that the blue-spotted worm is indeed on this mountain and that they can finally save Huyan. The leader is filled with joy, convinced that their efforts are finally paying off. Suddenly, the ground begins to shake violently, throwing everyone into disarray and leaving them unable to maintain their balance. At the fire pit, chaos erupts as the earth fractures beneath them. Sharp shapes begin to protrude from the ground, resembling massive legs or fangs, presenting a dire threat to everyone's safety. Finally, the hidden creature reveals itself, causing panic among the group as they scramble to escape or distance themselves from the danger. The elder, however, remains frozen in place, awestruck by the sheer majesty of the creature creature emerging piece by piece from the ground until it fully reveals itself, the giant blue-spotted worm. Meanwhile, back at the academy, the commotion caused by the worm reaches Will's ears. Curious, he wonders just how massive the worm must be for its presence to cause such an uproar. Though annoyed that the search has turned the mountain upside down, he also feels a surge of excitement, eager to see the creature himself. After a long and arduous night, calm returns to the mountain. The leader and his men succeed in slaying the giant worm and extracting its gem. Joy spreads through the group as the elder declares that Huyan can now be saved. The leader approaches his father and asks him to return to the village with the uninjured soldiers. The elder, puzzled, inquires about the reason for this request. The leader responds with a cryptic statement saying, "We carve grudges into our blood and kindnesses into stone," emphasizing their unyielding commitment to both vengeance and gratitude. The leader confirms that there are still matters to address on the mountain, and the elder agrees, reminding him that they must thank the young master who helped them. He suggests inviting Will as a guest and offering him a gift of his choice. The leader decides to visit Will himself to check on his well-being and inform him of what transpired, knowing that Will might be anxious to know their fate. Meanwhile, Will wakes up to find himself surrounded by 3 small larvae, puzzled as to how they got there. He realizes he has somehow become the mother of these larvae overnight. He recalls placing the worm eggs on his desk after cleaning them the previous night and is shocked to discover they have hatched. The larvae cling to him tenaciously. When he tries to remove one from his face for some breathing room, it bites him in defiance. Will reflects on the events of the previous night when his curiosity as an entomologist led him to search for the giant worm. He managed to locate its lair and steal the eggs, but stumbled during his escape, tripping over a hand-sized cockroach. Though the fall nearly caused him serious injury, he was relieved the eggs remained intact. He considers himself lucky that the rain had stopped. Otherwise, the mission would have failed entirely. Back at the academy, Will carefully cleaned the eggs and added them to his collection. Though slightly disappointed at not seeing the giant worm, he regards saving the larvae as a significant win. Looking at the larvae now clinging to him, Will pleads for some personal space, but their stubborn attachment frustrates him. In an attempt to solve the problem, an idea strikes him. Head to the water. He figures the larvae might slip off easily there. A mischievous glint flashes in Will's eyes as he hatches his plan. With a sly tone, he declares that he's going to take a bath to reclaim his space. At the same time, the leader arrives at the academy gate. Finding no sign of Will outside, he cautiously approaches and knocks on Will's door, calling out to him. Receiving no response, the leader hesitantly enters the room, announcing his presence loudly. Inside, he finds no one but notices several containers filled with herbs and medicines. This leads him to suspect that Will might be a practitioner of traditional medicine. However, feeling it improper to invade someone's room uninvited, the leader decides to leave. Just as he turns, a buzzing noise from one of the containers stops him in his tracks. Curiosity piqued, he cautiously approaches the source of the sound. Opening a container, the leader is stunned to see the black tiger spider inside. Hearing another sound coming from a drawer, he moves toward it and opens it to find the striped gecko. The leader is astounded, unable to believe the variety of venomous creatures housed in the room. As he continues exploring, he discovers other containers with beetles, unhatched eggs, and even drawers containing venomous snakes. Realizing that Will breeds these dangerous creatures, the leader is awestruck. Even for the Tang clan, renowned for their expertise in poisons and venomous creatures, this level of breeding and egg preservation is unheard of. Leaving the room, the leader is deep in thought, realizing that meeting the young master wasn't just a stroke of luck for saving his daughter, but an invaluable opportunity to know someone extraordinary. Will's voice suddenly interrupts his thoughts, calling to him from a distance. The leader responds with a greeting, and Will asks about his injured arm, concerned if the wound is severe. The leader reassures him that it's not serious, but adds that there's something more important he needs to discuss. Before he can continue, his expression changes abruptly, as though he has seen something terrible. terrifying. He senses a familiar energy emanating from the academy gate. The energy begins to take form, shaping itself into a monstrous figure. Finally, the source of the energy is revealed, a savage-looking individual who appears to be the leader's enemy. The leader shouts at Will, pushing him away and urging him to flee immediately. However, the attacker moves with lightning speed, landing a brutal strike on the leader. He barely manages to block it with his injured arm, wincing in pain as the force of the blow overwhelms him. The attacker unleashes a beam of energy toward the leader, hitting him directly and causing him to collapse to the ground. Struggling to rise, the leader recognizes his opponent's strength, which rivals that of his elder father. He shouts at Will to run, but it is too late. The attacker grabs Will and begins choking him mercilessly, laughing wickedly. The attacker sneers, claiming he heard that the scum of the Tang clan had come to Hainan, and he couldn't resist coming to meet them. He didn't expect to find the son of one of the most infamous poison clans in such a pitiful state. The leader demands to know the attacker's identity and reason for targeting him and the young master. Laughing, the attacker reveals himself as Bloodhand Raksha from Tak Anyang, adding that the leader's father is the reason for his grudge. He gestures to his bloody red fist, a mark of his suffering. The leader recalls the name and remembers the story of Raksha being struck in the head with the poison palm technique and falling off a cliff. The surprise lies in the fact that he's still alive. Furious, the leader shouts at Raksha, demanding that he release Will, as the young master has nothing to do with their feud. He even offers his life in exchange. Raksha mocks him, saying that will only happen in his dreams. He vows that no one from the Tang clan will be left alive. The leader feels helpless, knowing Raksha has no intention of letting Will go. Will, meanwhile, is choking and on the verge of losing consciousness as Raksha tightens his grip, laughing maniacally and clearly intent on killing him brutally and swiftly. In a critical moment, Will gathers his remaining strength and pleads with Raksha to let him go, only to be met with more mockery. Suddenly, 3 pairs of piercing eyes glare menacingly. Will's larvae spring into action, attacking Raksha with fierce bites on his arms and neck. Raksha screams in pain, swatting at the larvae and demanding to know where the insects came from. He initially laughs them off, claiming they are harmless, but his laughter fades as he feels venom coursing through his veins. The pain intensifies, and within moments, Raksha collapses to the ground, succumbing to the venom from the larvae bites. Will stands frozen in shock, unable to believe Raksha has died so quickly from the larvae's venom. He turns to the leader and asks in a trembling voice if Raksha was truly a wicked man. The leader, equally stunned, begins to grasp that Will is no ordinary traveler. He must become a part of the Tang clan. Days later, following Raksha's death, the leader suffers from a high fever and severe exhaustion. Will does his best to care for him, expressing concern for his worsening condition. The leader weakly thanks him, and Will asks where the other warriors are so he can check on them too, though he hesitates to leave the leader alone in such a state without another healer present. The leader assures Will that he will recover after a few days of rest. Will, however, is puzzled by the leader's calm demeanor, despite coughing up an unusual amount of blood. The leader brushes it off, remarking that it's nothing to worry about since he's a martial artist. Curious, Will asks if the leader means the type of martial arts where people can fly or shoot fireballs. The leader laughs, explaining that not everyone can do that, but such feats are part of the general concept of martial arts in their world. Will begins to realize just how different this world is from his previous one, where giant worms and extraordinary martial arts seem commonplace. The leader expresses his gratitude to Will, emphasizing that he owes him his life. He requests to introduce himself formally, despite his weakened state. Identifying himself as Tang Shiol San from the Tang clan, he turns to Will, who introduces himself as Will Soryong. Shiol San translates Soryong to mean little dragon, expressing admiration for the name and its profound meaning. The leader, visibly agitated, asks Will about the larvae clinging to him, questioning if they are indeed venomous. Will confirms, explaining that they are the larvae of the blue-spotted worm. The leader, ignoring his injuries, springs from his bed with excitement, asking if Will has truly managed to tame the blue-spotted worm. Will tries to calm him down, urging him to rest, but the leader insists on learning how Will accomplished such a feat and inquires about the other venomous creatures in his quarters. Will smiles cautiously, telling the leader that it's a long story and asking if he's ready to hear the whole thing. The leader eagerly replies that he loves long stories, prompting Will to recount how he came to raise the larvae. The leader is stunned by the tale and asks if Will really did all of this by himself, from collecting the eggs to taming the larvae. Will confirms, adding that he can even predict when the eggs will hatch with surprising accuracy. The leader is astonished, marveling at Will's ability to foresee such events, and his admiration for the young master deepens. Will asks the leader for a moment and retrieves a set of lizards from a drawer. He presents them to the leader, showing one ordinary lizard with yellow stripes on its body and another with white stripes on its tail. Then he unveils a third lizard with a yellow body and a white tail, explaining that it is the result of crossbreeding two lizards with prominent white stripes on their tails, leading to this new color variant. The leader, fascinated, examines the new lizard closely and remarks on its unique appearance, telling Will it seems he has truly created a new color. Will shares the leader's enthusiasm, acknowledging the beauty of the new variant. The leader pauses, swallowing hard, before asking Will a serious question. Is it possible to combine venomous creatures with strong toxins to develop a species with even more potent venom? Will ponders for a moment and replies that it is theoretically possible, but extremely challenging in practice. Before Will can elaborate, the leader interrupts, brimming with excitement, demanding to know how certain Will is of this possibility. Then, surprising Will, the leader makes a bold request. He asks Will to join the Tang clan. Will struggles to process the offer, but the leader shakes him enthusiastically, explaining that joining the clan would allow him to learn martial arts and access stores of herbs, medicines, and venoms he might need. The leader adds with great enthusiasm that someone like Will could even capture or raise the 10 legendary venomous creatures known for their unmatched toxicity in the Central Plains. The leader ends his pitch with an intriguing detail. His daughter is one of the 3 flowers of the Central Plains. Startled, Will asks the leader to repeat himself. Laughing, the leader reiterates that his daughter is considered one of the most beautiful women in the region, only to realize that Will's interest lies not in humans, but in venomous creatures. Will eagerly asks about the 10 legendary venomous creatures, wondering if they are as fascinating as the blue-spotted worm. The leader assures him that these creatures are far more incredible, stating that the blue-spotted worm ranks the lowest among them compared to the giant scorpion, the golden gleaming frog, and others with extraordinary abilities. Seeing the awe and excitement on Will's face, the leader realizes he has successfully convinced him to join the clan. 2 days later, the leader visits his warriors at their camp. They are shocked when he informs them that Raksha had appeared in Hainan. The leader explains that Raksha had been hiding all this time, honing his skills and strength, and that his current level is nearly equal to that of the leader's father. The warriors are even more astonished when the leader reveals that the one who killed Raksha wasn't him, but the young master, Will Soryong. They stare at Will in disbelief before approaching him with gratitude, thanking him for saving their leader. Some of them even jokingly ask if he is a seasoned martial artist who underwent rejuvenation. Will becomes uneasy with the barrage of questions from the warriors, but the leader steps in, suggesting they let Will explain in his own words. With a faint smile, Will calls out to the 3 larvae, prompting movement within his clothes. The warriors watch in stunned silence as the tiny creatures emerge, clinging tightly to Will. One of the warriors asks why Will keeps such creatures with him. The leader intervenes, explaining that these are the larvae of the blue-spotted worm, the very creatures that killed Raksha. The warriors are even more astonished, expressing disbelief at Will's ability to handle such highly venomous creatures without harm. One of them asks how he has managed to raise them safely. The leader firmly responds, declaring that Will's abilities are exceptional and far beyond those of an ordinary person. The leader emphasizes that this is why he is determined to have Will join the Tang clan, even though Will is still considering the offer. One of the warriors enthusiastically adds that this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity Will shouldn't miss. However, the leader interrupts, stating that they must act now and cannot afford any further delays. Will asks the leader if they are still searching for something specific. The leader explains that Bloodhand Raksha had been using a forbidden martial art called Venomous Blood Claw, which requires human blood and bone marrow to reach its full potential. Will is horrified by the brutality of such a technique. The leader continues, noting that if Raksha had any disciples or trainees, they must be dealt with to prevent the art from resurfacing, and any captives must be freed. The leader asks Will to assist them in this mission, particularly because of his familiarity with Hainan Island's geography. Will takes a moment to think, realizing that joining the Tang clan could secure him a prestigious position for life. At the same time, it offers an opportunity to test the leader's character during the mission. Will agrees to help, but insists they wait until the leader has fully recovered. The leader is delighted by Will's decision and expresses his gratitude. Will responds by saying the choice wasn't difficult, given that the mission involves saving lives. However, in truth, he plans to use the mission to learn more about the Tang clan and evaluate their working environment. 3 days later, the leader, fully recovered, leads the group to a nearby village close to the abandoned academy in search of clues about Raksha. They question the locals about any disappearances or unusual incidents. The village elder, an old man, mentions that 1 or 2 people vanish each year in the forest, but he doesn't think there's any clear pattern or connection in these cases. The leader thanks the elder for his cooperation, and the elder humbly responds that it's an honor to assist the renowned leader of the Tang clan. Despite their thorough search, the group finds no useful information. Will asks the leader if he suspects anything specific. The leader admits he initially thought Raksha had found them because he was nearby, but he now realizes the situation is more complicated than he anticipated. Will, too, finds it strange that there's no trace of Raksha in the area, but he recalls Raksha's words during their battle and arrives at an important conclusion. Will asks the leader if he remembers what Raksha said when he appeared at the academy. The leader, still recovering from the earlier fight, admits his memory of the details is hazy. Will reminds him of Raksha's words. "I heard the scum of the Tang clan were nearby, so I came to see for myself." Will points out that this suggests someone informed Raksha of the Tang clan's location. Therefore, they should investigate everyone who might have crossed paths with the Tang clan during their journey through Hainan, using a sketch of Raksha to gather information. The leader, impressed by Will's reasoning, praises the idea as ingenious and a significant step forward in their search. The team commends Will for his sharp thinking, agreeing that their plan is now much clearer. The team soon arrives at a gloomy and eerie village, its dark atmosphere unsettling. One of the warriors points out that this could be the place they've been looking for. The leader, Choi, confirms that this is the correct location, believing that those connected to Raksha might live here. He instructs his team to enter the village quietly and to interact with the villagers respectfully, as he's been told they are friendly. Upon entering, they notice the village is sparsely populated, and the few faces they encounter appear despondent and unusually fatigued. As they call out for someone to meet them, an old man emerges with a young girl and a few guards. The leader introduces himself, explaining their reason for visiting. While Choi speaks with the elder, Will's attention shifts elsewhere. Will observes that the village seems devoid of vitality. Even the young girl looks frail and exhausted. He notices the villagers' behavior is abnormal, as if they are under some kind of influence or spell. The village elder denies any cases of disappearances or strange events, but he sternly asks Choi to take his men and leave. Choi tries to express concern about the low population compared to the number of homes, but the elder reacts angrily, asserting that it's none of their business. Both Choi and Will are taken aback by the elder's overreaction. Choi attempts to de-escalate the situation, mentioning that Will told them the villagers were kind and welcoming. Before he can continue, the young girl suddenly collapses to the ground. The elder, panicked, kneels beside her, muttering that she's his only remaining family member and wondering why she's fallen ill too. Choi steps forward and offers to examine the girl, explaining that while he's not a professional doctor, he has some medical knowledge. The elder quickly agrees, desperate for help. During the examination, the elder reveals that a plague has been ravaging the village for years, killing children and severely weakening adults. Choi reassures the elder, promising to do his best to help. Grateful, the elder orders the villagers to comply comply with Choi's requests without delay. As Choi works to treat the girl, Will quietly asks one of the warriors about Choi's medical expertise. The warrior explains that Choi is highly skilled in medicine, as the Tang clan's specialization in poisons naturally led them to excel in medical knowledge. He adds that martial arts require a precise understanding of human anatomy, making the leader well-versed in medical principles. Will is surprised, having assumed the Tang clan was merely a group of assassins relying on poison in battle. He begins to consider the possibility of learning medical arts from them, rather than delving into their terrifying poison techniques. The warrior snaps Will out of his thoughts with a chilling remark, mentioning that the clan sometimes injects poisons into their enemies solely to study their reactions. Will shudders, realizing the dangerous world he's found himself in, and that the Tang clan is far from ordinary. When they reach the treatment area, Choi uses his internal energy to stabilize the girl's breathing by transferring a portion of his own vitality. The elder thanks him fervently, pleading for him to save his granddaughter. However, Choi notices something unusual about the girl's pulse and asks the elder if she was born with heart problems. The elder explains that her illness began a decade ago and that others in the village have suffered from similar symptoms, suggesting the presence of a mysterious disease. The elder admits this was why he initially asked them to leave, as he didn't want to expose them to the danger. Choi reassures him, stating that he will provide them with an effective remedy for heart issues and instructs the elder to gather the villagers so they can also receive treatment. The elder bursts into tears, overwhelmed with gratitude, thanking the leader profusely for his efforts. The leader responds with a warm smile, acknowledging the elder's relief. Later, as the leader strolls through the village with his trusted companion Joby, they discuss the patient's conditions. Joby commends the leader's dedication to helping the sick. The leader humbly thanks him and begins describing the symptoms he observed: lethargy, eye swelling, mild fever, and irregular heartbeats, symptoms that seem unrelated yet worsen in patients with severe heart conditions. After a moment of thought, the leader asks Joby about Will's whereabouts. Joby explains that Will had exhausted himself assisting the patients, so he helped him to his room to rest. The leader remarks that it's natural for Will to be tired, given his lack of martial arts training and the considerable effort he's put in. Deciding to check on him, the leader asks Joby to lead him to Will's room. Opening the door quietly, the leader notices something unusual on Will's face as he sleeps. Concerned, he quickly raises his hand and slaps Will's face hard, waking him abruptly. Will jolts awake, clutching his stinging cheek, his eyes brimming with tears.
They entered the room. Soryong was sleeping deeply on the bed, while the 3 centipedes were in a basket. Cheol-san peeked through the door. Then he noticed something. Immediately he entered. He raised his hand against Soryong. His hand was heavy. When he slapped Soryong, Soryong immediately woke up with pain on his cheek. Cheol-san was glaring at him. Soryong wondered what's with him all of a sudden. Soryong moved away from him out of instinct. He cradled his painful cheek. He grits his teeth and started getting angry. He asked why he did that and complained that it hurts. The elder apologized and explained that there was a bug on his face, so he wanted to catch it. Soryong finds it unbelievable. Cheol-san asked to be heard out. He wanted to check on him before he went to sleep, so he stopped by. However, a bug landed on his sleeping face. There are a lot of venomous insects in the area, so he thought it would be dangerous to leave the bug there, and so Cheol-san's hand went up on its own. He showed it to Soryong while saying that it's a large bug. Soryong was surprised to see that. Then he realized something. He confirmed with Cheol-san that even if the patients are suffering from various diseases, they all have arrhythmia. Cheol-san replied that it's correct. Soryong realized the cause of the illness in town was... Then he pointed at the bug, saying it was him. Kissing bug. It's a species of the Reduvidae family. It got its name because it sucks blood from the eye or lip area. They are so sneaky that they blood suck more quietly than a mosquito. That's why they are also called vampire or assassin bugs. The bugs themselves aren't venomous, but their stomachs are full of harmful parasites. So once a person is bitten, they can easily get infected through their excrement. They cause trypanosomiasis, also known as the Chagas disease. and are ranked 7th in the list of dangerous animals that killed humans the most. Soryong asked the village chief if the dogs of the village run out of breath easily or show similar symptoms to those in humans. The village chief replied that they do and asked if it's because of the bug, too. Soryong replied yes. He asked if it meant that they could save his granddaughter. Soryong replied that it's possible if they have the right medicine. Cheolson grinned. He asked Pai what he thinks. Pai replied that he can see the young warrior's true value. Soryong saw them and wondered what's wrong with them. They told him that they are the Sichuan Tang family. Soryong looked clueless, and once again Cheol-san repeated the same statement. In his head, Soryong asks, "So what?" His annoyed and confused expression was funny too. Cheol-san explained that there's something called gu. Some say they're venomous parasites, others simply call them witchcraft. They're bugs grown by evil men in China. He added that those men feed the bugs to people to cause them pain, or to make people do whatever they want them to do. Soryong replied that it sounds incredible. Cheol-san agreed, but countless martial artists have been killed by those gu, or were forced to kill their very own children, or were forced to betray their families and became a slave of those evil men. That's why many didn't spare efforts to find an antidote against gu. He's pertaining to cures that either make the gu come out of the body or that melt and kill them off inside the body. Soryong started to realize it. Then Cheol-san asked that if there's someone who succeeded in making a cure, who could it be? Then he proudly says that, of course, it's the great Sichuan Tang family. So he told them that if they have something that can melt off the fist-sized round worm inside the body, the tiny bug won't be a problem for them. He showed the curse-melting orb. Even a little bit of that medicine should be enough. Soryong expressed his amusement, but deep inside, he thought about how fancy the name is for an anti-parasitic drug. They assured the village chief that they can save his granddaughter. In the end, the villagers began to recover one by one, starting with the chief's granddaughter. The chief was so relieved. The villagers' warm hospitality was a nice extra reward. Seeing their bright and cheerful expressions, it seemed as if rumors regarding their optimistic personalities weren't wrong. Cheol-san expressed that it would have been difficult had it not been for Soryong identifying the reason. In that sense, he told everyone that he's not deserving of the gratitude, but Soryong is. They thanked the young warrior and called him their savior. Even though the Tang family's medicine cured the villagers, Cheol-san gave all the credit to him. Seeing Soryong get all the thank you made Cheol-san satisfied and happy, as if he's the one getting them. Soryong was touched by that sight. They all rejoiced, and they threw Soryong in the air repeatedly. A bit later, the village chief whispered to Cheol-san's ear about what they talked about at the entrance of the village. Cheol-san asked what it was. The village chief pertained to the villages who had missing people. Cheol-san remembered that and asked what about it. The old man expressed that he wanted to repay the favor as much as possible, so he looked into it, and a strange story came to his ears. Among their village's women, there is one who comes from another village, and she told him that a few years ago. Her hometown suffered a tragedy where a few people disappeared from the village. They all thought that they had finally found it. Cheol-san asked where the village is. The village chief replied that it's a small village to the west. Lo and behold, they arrived in that village. It stinks of corpses. They are in the right place. Cheol-san saw something. The corpses, trash, and bugs are scattered in the area. There's poison in the air. Pai told Soryong not to look because it's too gruesome, but Soryong already saw everything. A man noticed something and asked what it was. There's a gold chicken foot. It ate the corpse of a snake. It's Ho-Oh. Nah, I'm kidding. It's a mysterious bird. It has a golden tail, and colors of purple, pink, and black dominate its body. It looked magical. One person couldn't let it dishonor the dead anymore, so he grabbed a rock, and then he threw it at the bird. Chilson tried to stop him, but it was too late. The bird didn't get hit, but they definitely caught its attention. The man was furious, but Chilson placed a hand on his shoulder and told him that something feels off. The bird spread its wings. It emits miasma in the air. Soryong was surprised. It melted the skeletons. Someone grabbed Soryong by the mouth. Chilson ordered everyone to run while he held Soryong's mouth and nose. That beast is a zhenyao. The name literally translates to poison-feathered bird. After that encounter, the group was safe. They gathered around Chilson. Chilson informed everyone that when it spreads its wings, it's 5 feet wide. Its beak is sharp and bronze-colored, and the body is covered in purple feathers. When it unleashes its fury and spreads its wings, everything around it turns black and dies, becoming poison. On its head, it has a golden crown, truly a regal presence. This is called a gen, or a zhenyao. Soryong had thoughts. His eyes were full of enthusiasm when he asked if it's one of the 10 great venomous creatures. Chilson replied yes. He explained that this occupies the very top of the great venomous creatures and is called the zhenyao, known as the king of all the venom. Soryong was so excited. In his mind, even venomous insects and snakes on Earth seem adorable in comparison to it. Soryong thought of how biochemical weapons are just roaming in his current world. Chilson said that it seems to have been drawn in there by snakes carrying venom. It's said that the zhenyao only eats the heads of venomous snakes. Soryong asked if it was common. Chilson replied no, and it's quite rare. So rare that one might only catch a glimpse of it in 100 years. Soryong was so amazed. It made Chilson inquire as to why he asked. He asked if it's possible to catch it. That flabbergasted the Tang members. Chilson was amused and asked Soryong if he wanted to try catching it. Soryong replied yes, but he's worried about the venom. Chilson smiled. He understood that Soryong had a great interest in 10 great venomous creatures. If that's the case, he told him, there's a way. Soryong was surprised. Chilson informed him that if he masters the Tang clan's poison techniques, he will become immune to all poisons and be able to withstand Zhenyao's venom. Only with their clan's martial arts he can block poisons in the entire world. Chilson was sly when he dropped the statement that they don't teach their clan's techniques to outsiders. Even if he wants to help him, as the patriarch, he can't break the rules. Soryong eagerly asked if he could learn it if he became a part of the family. He also asked that if he becomes immune to poison, would he really withstand the zhenyao's venom? Chilson replied, of course. And that if Soryong agrees to it now, he will teach him without holding back and make sure to take care of his gift as well. He added that if Soryong takes too long hesitating, he would also hesitate. Soryong felt the pressure. Then he announced that he will do it and become a member of the clan. He told him that he's looking forward to his guidance. He called him patriarch now instead of elder. The cunning man had a mischievous grin on his face and replied as if he didn't bait Soryong into agreeing. Chilson told Soryong that from then on he is, forever, one of their family.
Back at a decayed location, traces of the blood hand Rakshasa, Tak Anyang, were found in a cave. Footsteps led to a notebook discovered inside, which was brought to Chilson. After scanning its contents, he confirmed it held the secret techniques of the blood hand poison claw. Soryong was unnerved, noting it was written in blood. Chilson decided it was time to return. When Soryong asked if they were heading to Sichuan, Chilson replied that it was the best course of action now that they had secured the blue spot centipede's core and the manual. Soryong requested a stop at the academy to release his friends and gather his belongings, which Chilson approved. As they departed, Soryang glanced behind and noticed something unusual. Pointing it out, they discovered a shining purple feather from the jinyao. They all stared at it thoughtfully. Kailson picked it up and told Soryang it would serve as a keepsake to commemorate his joining the family. Soryang expressed interest and thanked him, but Kailson corrected him, suggesting he change how he addressed him after the upcoming ceremony. Soryang wondered if it would be some kind of initiation ritual. Meanwhile, at the Tang clan, the Grand Patriarch Tang Musong had finally returned. Exhausted, he wasted no time and inquired about Huayan's condition. Clan members rushed him inside, reporting that she was barely holding on to life. The door opened and Musong immediately called for Huayan. Those inside were surprised by his arrival. He informed his daughter-in-law that he had succeeded in acquiring the medicine and revealed the blue spot centipede's core. Overcome with relief, the daughter-in-law began to cry. Preparations were made to administer the medicine. Musong was deeply moved by Huayan's pained expression, thankful he had hurried back in time. At his daughter-in-law's urging, Musong gave the medicine to his granddaughter. A radiant blue light enveloped her as he placed a finger on her wrist to check her pulse. Everyone anxiously hoped for her to open her eyes, watching and waiting. Meanwhile, Soryang felt groggy, marveling at the vastness of the Central Plains, which far exceeded his expectations. The journey had taken over a month and a half, beginning with a boat ride from Hainan to Hangzhou and continuing through Nanjing before finally arriving in Sichuan. At the residence of the Sichuan Tang clan, Pai excitedly announced their destination to Soryang. Standing at the grand entrance, Soryang gaped as he learned the entire mountain belonged to the Tang clan, aptly named Tang Clan Mountain. He swallowed nervously, overwhelmed by the sight. Immediately, members of the Tang clan emerged to greet the patriarch. Soryang was astonished by their sheer numbers, wondering if all of them belonged to the Sichuan Tang clan. Among the crowd, a girl in a red dress ran toward them, her face lit with tears of joy as she called out for her father. It was Huayan. She embraced her father tightly, crying tears of relief. Soryang meanwhile was spellbound. Her radiant beauty left him speechless, surpassing even the celebrity he had once been involved with in his past life. Chilson, pleased to see his daughter alive, introduced Huayan to Soryang. Dazed, Soryang struggled to piece together Chilson's earlier comments, muttering something about weeds or grass before Chilson corrected him. It was all about the flower. Huayan's cheeks flushed red. Chilson told Soryang that the girl beside him was the flower he had previously dismissed. Soryang was left dumbfounded. He recalled their earlier conversation about the flower and felt a wave of embarrassment. In that moment he knew he had made a grave mistake. He never imagined he had overlooked the chance of being with such a beautiful woman, the only daughter of the Sichuan Tang clan, famously known as the venomous flower Tang Huayan. Since childhood, Huayan carried a hidden emotional weight. She once overheard elders discussing her. While they were uncertain of her talent, they agreed her beauty was exceptional, enough to rank her among the 3 flowers of the Muram. The conversation shifted to finding her a suitable husband. One elder mentioned suggesting the patriarch take a second wife, but the patriarch had declined, leaving him baffled. Hearing this, Huayan resolved to prove herself to the clan by excelling in their martial arts. She wanted to show that even as a woman she could contribute greatly to the family. However, her impatience led her astray, creating an internal heart demon that caused a key deviation in her training. When Huayan awoke, her mother, the Grand Patriarch, and 2 others surrounded her bed. Her mother looked visibly relieved. Tears streamed from Huayan's eyes as she apologized, lamenting that she had failed her family and lost all her inner chi. Her grandfather, the Grand Patriarch, called her a brat and told her to stop crying. He reminded her how far she had come to reach the level of mastering 100 poisons and told her to cheer up. Huayan's confusion grew when he mentioned 100 poisons. She noticed her aura glowing and asked for clarification. The Grand Patriarch revealed a story about a mysterious young warrior who had not only saved her life but also endowed her with the inner chi of 1,000 poisons, far surpassing what she had previously achieved. In the present, Huayan asked about weed, leaving Soryang utterly embarrassed. His earlier flippant remark comparing her to weeds resurfaced in his mind. He berated his past self for such thoughtlessness but tried to dismiss the moment by joking that the patriarch had taken the comment too seriously. Gathering himself, he greeted Huayan formally, stating how glad he was to see her healthy. Huayan introduced herself as Tang Huayan, also known as the venomous flower. She expressed her gratitude, promising never to forget the life-saving favor he had done for her. Soryang, entranced by her beauty, struggled to form coherent thoughts. Kailson interrupted, asking Soryang what he thought of his daughter. To Soryang's shock, he heard a voice in his head, realizing it was some form of sound transmission. Kailson teased, asking if Soryang agreed that Hwayan was stunning and hinted at the possibility of them growing closer. Later, Soryang rested in a large bath, feeling utterly drained. Nearby, the centipedes he had cared for were sleeping peacefully in a basket. He noticed one waking up and, surprisingly, smiling at him. Despite their intimidating appearance, they seemed to understand his words when he warned them about the hot water, willingly staying in the bucket as he suggested. Amused by their behavior, Soryang recalled Pai's mention that centipedes were spiritual creatures. He made a mental note to learn more about them later. However, Kailson's earlier remarks about Hwayan lingered in his mind, leaving him restless. At another pavilion, the family gathered around a large table. The Grand Patriarch, the Patriarch, his wife, and Hwayan. Kailson announced his decision to give Soryang the East Wing Room, a space traditionally reserved for couples in Chinese residences. The Grand Patriarch questioned if Soryang was truly that talented. Kailson confirmed, explaining that Soryang's remarkable abilities went far beyond mere chance encounters. He elaborated that Soryang not only possessed unparalleled knowledge of venomous creatures but also defeated Ouyang, encountered legendary spiritual creatures, and even hatched the blue spot centipede eggs himself. The Grand Patriarch commented on the Patriarch's luck in finding such a treasure. The conversation then turned to Hwayan. Kailson told his daughter that he wished to make Soryang his son-in-law, asking for her opinion. As Hwayan processed her father's words, realization dawned on her. She grew quiet. Hwayan wanted to prove that she could bring greater value to the clan now that she possessed the 1,000 Poisons Constitution, surpassing the mere 100 Poisons Constitution. She responded that as a member of the Tang clan, she understood her father's intentions. However, she declared that it was her responsibility to determine if the young warrior was truly deserving of her. Without waiting for a reply, she dashed out of the room, leaving behind an awkward atmosphere. In Kailson's mind, he thought the young warrior ought to be cautious. Though his rose was stunningly beautiful, her thorns were equally sharp. Hwayan ran swiftly, her emotions in turmoil. Now that she had achieved the 1,000 Poisons Constitution, she was determined not to stop there. She knew that unless she pushed further, the elders would never fully recognize her. She resolved to evaluate the young warrior thoroughly, from his abilities to his character. Meanwhile, Soryang was lost in thought, contemplating how to navigate the situation. He suspected Hwayan might harbor resentment toward him. Half-jokingly, he asked his centipedes, his kids, for advice. Suddenly, Hwayan appeared before him, stunning him completely. She was breathtaking. Side note: the art style here is so vivid it feels like a scene straight out of a classic manhwa. Back to the moment, Hwayan quickly excused herself, saying she was in a hurry, and asked for his hand. Soryang extended his hand hesitantly, blushing as he did so, feeling like a loyal pet offering a paw. Trying to lighten the tension, he suggested that they should only do such things after getting closer, as there's a proper order to such matters. Hwayan froze for a moment before understanding his misunderstanding. Her face turned beet red as she corrected him, insisting that wasn't her intention at all. Realizing his mistake, Soryang felt a wave of embarrassment. Hwayan sighed and clarified again, explaining that she had only wanted to check his pulse. She apologized for startling him by suddenly asking for his hand. Sitting beside him, she admitted that her approach had been abrupt and assured him that she only wanted to explain some things. Soryang listened attentively. Hwayan began recounting her struggles, sharing how, as the Tang clan's sole direct descendant, she constantly faced schemes from the branch families. To secure the family's future, the elders had decided to seek a capable son-in-law. They even considered how Soryang's role within the family might change should he join. She apologized in advance for needing to confirm something but assured him that no matter the outcome, she would treat him with respect as her benefactor, potentially even as a sworn sibling. Soryang reassured her, offering his hand again and saying she was free to confirm whatever she needed. Hwayan placed her hand on his wrist, emitting a faint blue aura as she assessed his pulse. She explained that the Tang clan's martial arts were unique. They required practitioners to adapt to toxins gradually as their internal energy grew. The poisons were ranked: 5 poisons, 10 poisons, 100 poisons, 1,000 poisons, and finally 10,000 poisons. To her surprise, Soryang's body could adapt to 10 poisons, a rare feat for someone not born into the Tang clan. However, it was only 10 poisons, which meant his aptitude would place him at the level of a first-rate martial artist but no higher. She explained that this was the pinnacle someone without innate talent could reach. She then took her leave, leaving Soryang deep in thought. Alone, Soryang mulled over the revelation. A 10-poison body? His face paled at the implications. It might mean he couldn't capture the Jinyao, a crucial goal for him.